agenda, and it wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. It was.
Welcome to the June 29th meeting of the Ames Community School District Board of Directors. Call the meeting to order and take approval of the agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Rasmussen, second by Franson. Discussion? Proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Passes 6-0. Director Franson, would you please read the mission statement?
The mission of the Ames Community Schools is to ensure that all learners develop the knowledge, skills, attitudes, values, and personal esteem necessary to grow in and shape a changing society.
Thank you. Our first item this morning is item number 3 for the meal program. I'll take a motion.
I move to approve the policy 710.6 meal and snack charges as presented.
Second.
Moved by Rosser, second by Rasmussen. Discussion.
I'd start out just, this has been discussed a lot at this table and then in policy. Started in either March or April with Director Briggs as that this would need to get addressed. Certainly we've heard more about it lately. The positive of that is, you know, I used to, every time I go to the grocery store, get stopped to discuss literacy programs or, you know, some of the other events that were going on in the district, and now every time I get stopped at the grocery store, it's somebody asking me, how do I donate to this? And so there is public attention being paid to this, which is a positive thing. I mean, there are families in need, and this has brought attention to it, which we can all look at as a positive. I believe the policy is rewritten about as good as possible. Like to thank Chris and Kate for all their effort in putting that together. And since you just walked in, thank Karen Stein for one. Sometimes it's amazing on a policy how one word can change the meaning of a sentence, and she threw a change out in that part about making donations that was immediately accepted by Director Briggs and I, and is in the paperwork here, that adding the word specifically into that sentence really makes a point that if people are going to donate, they need to note that it needs to go to the nutrition fund, and because that way we will make sure that it gets earmarked to go to families that need the money applied to their fund. And so a lot of positive changes here, and Director Briggs is not here yet. I thought that he was going to be here, but so I would say that in policy committee we both were in approval of this policy change as it is, as you see it in front of you today. And so I certainly can't speak to how he would vote here today, but in policy it was unanimous between the two of us that we like the rewrite as it is.
Just a couple of questions for you, Tim. What led to the change of going from 25 to 100 for that balance change? What's the rationale?
Do you have better insight on that, Chris?
Well, originally when we put the policy together, everything was focused on a student basis, and because the limit was $25 at that time, we had said $10 per account because we couldn't figure out. It had to be less than the 25 if we were sending to collections at the end of the year to keep people under the 25. But with the revised policy, we decided that it would be $100 per family as opposed to a count, so that if we had one student that was at 50 but another was at set 25, that we wouldn't send both those accounts. It would have to be 100, but on the other hand, if we had 3 accounts at $75, we would send it to collections. So it not only changed in amount, but it changed from student to family.
So then in our experience, are we noticing by the end of the year accounts are generally going closer to positive, or is it just a continual decline throughout the year?
Well, under the current policy, they've been getting better.
But just like I'm just curious, like what's tendencies for parents? Are they making improvements throughout the year that as it gets closer to the end, we're seeing more deposits coming in, or are they just not paying
Well, they haven't been increasing because with the $25 limit, they've either been getting an alternative lunch at elementary at no charge, so it doesn't affect the account, or at middle and high school, they have not been eating, so there's been no charge to the account. So I'm not sure how to answer that question.
I guess it leads into another question I have is we're using a collection agency now. In practice, what does that look like? Are they reporting to the 3 credit reporting agencies? Are they making phone calls? What does that look like?
We are using the Credit Service Bureau of Iowa. They are a credit bureau as opposed to a collection agency. So it's kind of a combination. They do written, they do phone calls, but the one thing that they are allowed to do that our previous company was not allowed is eventually to report to the credit agencies, so that to the rating agencies. So they have I think I presented it. I didn't come prepared for that question with their brochure, but it's a multi-step process.
Okay. And this goes beyond just the lunch balances, of course, so other fees that are due to the district.
As we're triggering it on lunch balances, but as we prepare to send, we also review their fees, and if they have outstanding fees from prior years, we didn't send this year's, but prior years we're sending those as well.
Director Deardorff, I had a similar question and concern regarding the change from $25 to $100. And my concern is that, in the past policy, the $25 limit triggered the use of the collection agency. Now it's not going to be triggered until $100. Now that's per family. So that makes sense, and I understand, Chris, what you were saying about if it's 2 or 3 or 4 children, but it's still $100, and I'm concerned that means we're going to be carrying more of a debt until people are sent to collections. So I'm just wondering if maybe we want to find something in between, like $50.
Well,
and why would that be detrimental? Or the other option, Chris, would be to say $100 per family, or just say $25 per account, because you said it's individual account for each student, so that, let's say if it's 4 children in a family, once it got to $100, then it would go. But if it's just 1 child, it would still be the $25. I just don't want to see the account build up unnecessarily.
Chris, what are the internal, I guess go to the point of that, what are the internal processes until it hits whatever that threshold number is?
So the $25 was not triggering collections. The $25 was triggering the policy. The alternative lunch at elementary or the no lunch at middle school. What we have sent to collections up to this point have been balances that had accumulated in prior years, because the balances weren't continuing to accumulate this year or the last 2 years as the policy was in place. So I think we were down to, we have sent no students that are currently qualified for free. We have sent none of those accounts to collections. We have only sent paid and reduced, and I think we're down to the point where they owed $50 or more. I hate to put it like at a 25 or a 50 and whenever it's triggered, because we're going to be sending all the time. I mean, the accounts go up and down daily depending on when people get deposits on. We had a situation where we had sent an account to collection. First, we got it prepared about 10 o'clock in the morning, and she checked the balance just before she submitted everything electronically, and the parent hadn't followed the directions in the letter, had gone to the school, written a check for the full amount, went on at the school, and it crossed. So the account was paid off. I mean, the collection agency took it off. It wasn't an issue, but I'm trying to get to a workable amount that and my thought is that we're going to be doing this at the end of the school year to allow parents to try to get those balances paid off at some point during the year. I can certainly work, if you want to change it, that once it gets to $100, but I think if at $25 a student, we're going to be sending to collections every week, and once you send, you then have to amend the account. You have to add to it. So it's not as easy as the initial time we send. So I was trying to find something that was a little more workable for both families and for the business office is the way. And I think I talked to Director Rosser at the policy committee meeting. The reason I chose that is that that's what a lot of the neighboring schools are doing. That's their threshold, is when it reaches $100 per family. It wasn't a great idea that Chris had. I'll take no credit for that, but it seemed to be a standard practice for the districts around us that they were doing 100 per family.
In collections, we, refresh my memory, we lose what percentage of?
Well,
When they
currently, up and through, before this policy goes into effect, currently, if we send a $100 account to collections and they collect it, we put the $100 on the student's account, and then we write them a check out of the general fund for $38. In this particular case, we are now going, based on this policy, when we send to collections, we will add those fees. So instead of sending $100, we'll send $138. It's never going to be exact, because we're going to still owe 38% on the $38, but at least we can cut some of our fees down and impact to the general fund. So that was one of the other changes that we made in the policy, that the collection fees will actually be added to the amount sent to collections. And again, I take no creative license on that. That was what other districts were doing. So I thought that was a good idea.
Yeah, I thought that was a great idea to add that collection piece so that we didn't have that impact on the general fund. So I guess I'm comfortable in what I'm hearing you say, correct me if I'm wrong, that you don't, the policy says that as soon as the family hits $100, it's turned over at the end of the school year to the superintendent, with options including collection agency, small claims, and so on. So you don't automatically do that. You use discretion in your office to decide whether you're going to do that or not. Before
we send an account to collections, we send a letter to the family, giving them 15 days to come in and make the payment. We request that payment come into the business office because where the nutrition person is, because the people in the buildings, the staff in the buildings don't know whether it's for a past due or, so we know then to write that off the account. And so as soon as they get the 15 days to make it right, and then it doesn't get sent to collections. Then it does get sent to collections, and at that point, we are not allowed to contact the family in any way, shape, or form on that balance. So even our weekly reminders that they owed money would violate the law in that case. So we have to actually write that off the students' accounts in Infinite Campus, move that to a separate spreadsheet to keep track of it, and so their account at that point goes back down to the amount. So let's say it was $100. At that point, we'd take the $100 off. If they happened to eat lunch that day and there was $5 or $2.90 on there, the $2.90 would stay, but I don't know if I make any sense, but we have to take it off the Infinite Campus account when we send it to collections.
Are we trying to accommodate families? So I'm hopeful that if someone were to come in and say, hey, this stuff happened, I can get you caught up in 3 months over these kind of installments. Do we work with parents to try to work that out?
Yeah, that's one of the things we offer all year long, but especially when we're going to collections, we allow them to make a payment arrangement. And as long as we have a form that they sign and how much they're going to do and however long, and I sign it and the parent signs it. And as long as they're making that effort, then under the old policy in that case, we didn't take it off the student's account, but we would let Chartwells know that this child was allowed to eat. Actually, we were taking it off the account because there was no way at the schools to manage that. We were taking it and moving it to another spreadsheet. We had 2 spreadsheets, one for collections and ones that we had payment arrangements. We had a handful of payment arrangements. I mean, it wasn't very many. In this particular case, it won't matter because the policy allows them to eat. So they could make the payment arrangements and it would just go to their account.
And that's also why that sentence in that paragraph says options may include, and it talks about collection agencies. It does give the leeway that if they have a payment plan and somebody owes $200, that we are not forced to, the policy is not forcing Chris to send that to collections at that point, so.
I would always prefer to collect it ourselves and
Yes.
save the $38.
Please.
Yes, or the whatever, the 38%.
38%, yes.
So it's been interesting. I have been inundated with calls thanking me for taking a stand on this policy. I've never received so many calls and comments thanking me and telling me I'm taking the right position by opposing a change in the policy. It's just been overwhelming. It's been so many people talking to me, it interferes with my workday. So sometimes we hear people making comments at the public forum and are deeply influenced by that, but that, in this situation, is obviously not the majority. The only negative comment that I've received from a telephone call is that I've been acting like a curmudgeon, and that that's not my personality. And I got to thinking about that, and I have been acting like a curmudgeon, and the reason why is because these things are deeply interrelated. And what I've tried to get people to understand, and nobody at this board table except Tim and I went through a $4 million cut, and we had to do that to keep this school operating. I don't think people understand recent history. I don't think anybody at this table understands how difficult and how messy and how terrible that was to go through that situation. And Karen Shemp and Tim, and now Chris, and our bond counsel, Tim Oswald, and some other leaders on the board, and I have worked very hard to keep us on track. And we're not quite on track. We're not putting away as much of our unspent reserve as we should. And if we violate that policy and get an audit comment, and if our solvency ratio changes and we get an audit comment, and if we get an audit comment on this policy creating more debt, it's going to change our bond rating. If we change our bond rating, it's going to change our interest rate. We're talking about $100 million for a high school. If we change our interest rate 0.5%, that's as much as $500,000 a year. $500,000 a year if we get a change in our bond rating that causes a 0.5% change in interest. So that's why I've been curmudgeonly. But I am by nature a problem solver. And so I'm thinking, how do we handle this? Because we're not going to change anybody's views here. I mean, we've got some deeply ingrained views that it doesn't matter how logical of argument you make, they're not going to change. You'll never convince me a change in this policy has anything to do with starving children. Absolutely cannot convince me of that. That belongs in a different discussion, not this discussion. This discussion is solely about implementation of the Department of Agricultural Federal Nutrition Program. If we have starving children under that program, we need to go to Congress and tell them to direct the Department of Agriculture to change its policies. We don't do it school by school. So you're not going to change my thinking on that. And I'm obviously not going to change others' thinking on that. I mean, it's just, it's impossible to change each other's thinking there, isn't it? So I'm thinking, what is the root of this proposal? And as Director Rosser told us, the root of this proposal is that people will not take advantage of the school. People are not going to use this policy to run up debt against the school because people are good. Director Rosser tells us the people of Ames will send money to take care of our deficiencies. So I'm thinking, yeah, I'm a lawyer. I wouldn't have a job if people were really that good, would I? I mean, if I wasn't working every day carrying what people do to take advantage of each other and breaking laws and breaking policies, I wouldn't have a job. So I'm skeptical. But to be a problem solver, how do we get through that? Because other people aren't skeptical. And you're not going to change each other's ideas, right? So here's the solution. The solution is that I'll support this policy with an amendment. And the amendment allows this community to prove we made the right decision. The amendment simply changes the first paragraph so that if we go back to an unacceptable negative balance, that the current policy becomes effective again. The current policy becomes effective again. And if the board at that time wants to change the policy to something else, they can. It's not directing a future board as to how they have to conduct themselves because they can change the policy. But what it does is allow this community to prove that all the comments that have been made are correct. That parents won't take advantage of the program and the community will step up and the community will not allow that deficiency to harm the school. So I'm merely asking for a reversionary policy at $55,000. The only change to the policy is that reversionary statement in the prelude paragraph. And I move an amendment to the proposed policy as set forth on the document I just passed out to the board.
Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion. So the, basically, Bill, you're just adding a sentence at the end that says, however, the financial integrity of the nonprofit school nutrition program, anytime the total negative balance of the program reaches 55, this policy and administrative rules shall be superseded by the policy and rules that were effective immediately prior to June 29, 2017.
Correct.
So you're just adding that sentence.
I'm just adding that sentence, and all I'm doing is acknowledging that the reason we have the policy that's effective as of today is because people were taking advantage of the program. And I'm just saying, let's give this a chance. Let's not have arguments about the details. Let's not have philosophical arguments. Let's give this a chance. And in the event that it's incorrect, that people will take care of this. They'll take care of their accounts, and the community will contribute to the accounts. In the event that that's incorrect, we revert to our previous policies so that we do not harm the school.
No, Bill, go ahead.
What is the current balance right now, Chris?
I haven't ran it for a week or so. We've got a few small donations in since then. It was just under 39,000 when I ran it,
Right.
including 8,000 that's been sent to collections.
And a couple weeks before that, it was about 43,000. And when we implemented this new policy in 2015, it was at what?
109,000.
Okay. Bill, I appreciate your problem-solving skills. And I would be open to this if that trigger was a little higher, simply because of the fact that we could reach that for the following reason. We could reach that $55,000 mid-school year, because I don't see a reference in here to it being at the end of the school year. So in other words, we could reach that mid-school year before we've actually taken some action to recoup those fees and such, and which we do mostly at the end of the school year, as we just discussed with Chris. And I would, I can't support that mid-school year. I think it's too low. So either we need to change that, it needs to be added that some reference to at the end of the school year, or raise that figure to $100,000, because that's what it was when things got bad and we started this policy. I still firmly believe that we won't have this problem. Parents are going to be held responsible for paying their bills. We're never going to allow, like the previous administrations allowed, the debt to ever get that high, using the better communication that we've used, the better way in which we've encouraged people to apply for free and reduced lunches, the way that we've used interpreters to better help families to fill out those forms. All of these measures have helped reduce these debts. So in addition to that, we're not going to allow parents to just take advantage of the situation. I think that's changed, that attitude, and I think I've heard Chris mention that a little bit in her conversations in the policy committee. The attitude has changed over the past 2 years. Parents don't think they can just get away with it anymore. And I'm firmly a believer, not in, oh, we're gonna have people raise a bunch of money, which I do believe that, but more importantly, I firmly believe that parents are responsible for paying their children's lunch charges, and we're going to hold them responsible for that. That is not something that we're going to stop doing. So again, without a change to designating that to the end of the year or raising it to $100,000, I can't support it as it's written.
Chris, would there be difficulty in making that change mid-year? If that was done, or would it have to be at the end of a school year per policy?
I would think it'd be easier to change semester. I did ask Director Talbot if I could have a privilege to make just a comment. I have no idea if the amendment's going to pass or not, but one thing I would ask if it is that language be added that if it reaches a certain amount on the last day of a month, because balances change every single day. They change, they can change every hour. So for me to monitor every day whether it's at a certain level, I think would be difficult. So I'd like it to be a point certain, whether that's a month, whether it's a semester, whatever. I just need something more than whatever the balance reaches 55, sorry.
That makes good sense. Everything Louis has talked about reinforces that this is a good change to the policy, because it will give everyone the opportunity to prove that we're doing the right thing. I think 100's a little high, and the reason I believe that is because we had an audit comment at that level. Audit comments, I don't know what that means to anybody that's watching. I think Tim probably knows. I know Steve Shanker knows. Audit comments hurt you very badly. Negative audit comments. When you're going to get a loan for your business, if you have negative audit comments, that's the first thing you go through with your banker. It's the first thing Moody's is going to look at in our bond rating. So I think 100's a little high. I wouldn't have any problem changing that to have a figure of, say, 70,000 at the end of a semester. So that way we help the business office with the timing, and we're supposed to have a report, as I understand it, at every board meeting that tells us what the negative balance is. Is that correct? So we've got a lot of time as a board to take action before the end of the semester. So I wouldn't have any problem amending the amendment to make it $75,000 at the end of a semester.
I think that provides the community an opportunity to be aware, rather than all of a sudden we get this report and it's larger than 55, so right away we move back. But look, this is where we're going. This is the impact that this policy has had, and by the end of the semester, if it's not at this certain point, then we are going to go back to that policy because it's been proven wrong. Or, hey, yes, it is working, so we're going to continue with it. I believe that gives some leeway, time for our families and our community members. So, Chris, what are you shared some of your thoughts, impact on just how functional this is. Is the hard stop at the semester, my thinking is in terms of our staff that are managing this, that makes that a little more feasible for them to respond to?
I think the change of the policy happening first semester, I'm not sure that the trigger being on the last day of the semester helps, because Kate and I still need planning time to get that done. We need to notify building staff, we need to notify Chartwell staff. So maybe, and again, I'm just trying to think on the fly how, I can't have, if the balances reach $75 on January 10th, change the policy on January 11th. That's just not workable. So I don't know, maybe it can be addressed in the administrative rules. Kate and I are going to start working on administrative rules to this policy. We had some other things that had to be done by June 30th, so we knew we had till school to get the administrative rules. Maybe we could be allowed to work that timing out in the administrative rules. Any suggestions? I just, we need some prep time to get a new policy started if it was going to change.
Well, could you somehow, and I'm thinking on the fly here too, but if you could say, you know, this is the date by which we will judge that amount, and then provide the staff a month to make those procedural changes for.
So maybe by the end of November?
And Dr. Taylor, does the administrative rule give you leeway to have time to implement the policy, or does that have to be in the policy?
No, the administrative rules will give us time to make that leeway. Right.
Yeah, and so Chris can study the issue and have appropriate amount of time in the administrative rules.
Right.
I struggle with, I guess, the fact of waiting till semester end to send a collection based on what's proposed, because I feel like we're floating people that whole year. So, again, I'll support it as amended. I guess I'm just thinking that we shouldn't wait so long to send for collection.
The only issue I'm going to have with that is that if someone is, I'm going to take worst case, I'm going to be the cynic here and say worst case scenario, someone's taking advantage. At 100 we send it, they accumulate another 100, we send it, we accumulate another 100, we send it. If no one paid just lunch all day, if they were a paid student and didn't pay lunch all year, that's over $500. So we could technically send someone to collections 5 times during that year. That seems, because we have to wipe it off and they start over. And there's nothing else in the policy other than they continue to charge lunch. So I'll work whatever the board wants to, but I was trying to give the families the year to get the balance paid. Maybe it could be semester as opposed to every time it reaches $100. So anybody that's over $100 at semester, we could do that. If a family is over, at least that's only twice a year then.
Mm-hmm. And most of our collections have been from internal collection, not from the collection agency, haven't they?
Up until up until January, that's when we really started not seeing any more collections coming in. I think anybody who was making an effort to get it paid off was at that point.
So the majority of that 109, when it got to 109 to bring it down, was from internal processes, and so
yes.
if we continue the internal processes, we're not paying the 38%. Like Chris said, I'd much rather keep the internal processes and send it to collections once at whatever point, maybe twice, but I guess I'm fine with that. But
I think we do have to recognize that the fact that elementary students were getting an alternative lunch and middle and high school kids were not eating was also an impetus to get that paid off. So I'll do whatever you want on that. I just don't want to, if we say every time they reached $100, that could, especially if we have a family with multiple children, that could be very often.
Yeah, it doesn't, the policy doesn't say that the $100 goes to the collection agency. And the policy says that it's turned over to the superintendent or superintendent designate to elect a method.
Yeah. I would only.
You're not addressed right. You're not addressed right now. You're not being addressed right now. There'll be time. So Alex, there'll be time for public comment after this.
Because it is subject to the right to talk.
Listen.
And I also believe maybe my idea will help to found some.
I would only be interested in. For me, this change would have to be something that changes it at the end of a school year. Changing it mid-year, I think is going to cause too much confusion, and I'd have a hard time with that. The other part of it is any future board needs to review this anyway. I'd feel better about it if you gave me a threshold, and that threshold meant that it had to go back to board at that point, instead of just going back to the old policy that if that threshold is reached, and if it's, you know, whatever number, I don't care the number, but whatever that number is, once it's reached, it must be reviewed by policy committee or must be reviewed by board again, and force that board at that time to address the issue. I'd feel better about that than going back to the old policy, especially since there's certainly some things in the procedural rules that would have to change. And so we wouldn't be going back to the policy as it is written. There's no way I would support going back to the policy as it was in place during the 16-17 school year. And so I would think that we have to just red flag it at that point, that it comes back to board for discussion. I'd feel better about that.
Yeah, so I didn't intend to weigh in, but I'm probably with you on that, Tim. I think who knows what life will be like at that time if and when that happens, but I think that probably accomplishes the spirit of Bill's interest in that, hey, this is a serious matter and it needs to elevate to some attention at that point. With whatever the rules are and whoever the board members are, I like that part of it as hopefully this never gets kicked into action, but if it does, 5 years from now, who knows if the rules of 16-17 would even apply.
It could be 5 years from now, and there could be not just the 7 elected members. I mean, and, you know, no offense, Chris. I mean, I hope you're here for, you know, much longer than any of the rest of us. But yeah, I mean, jobs change, everything changes. It could be 9 completely new people sitting up here that are going to have this discussion, and those people should have that discussion. And which is why I'd rather not lock them into something. Yeah.
So your change would be to that last sentence, that it would, anytime the total negative balance of the program reaches 55,000, or whatever the amount.
Whatever number.
Yours would be that it would go back to the board to be
automatically be put on the next board agenda, maybe, for discussion.
So that, Mike, Tim, I agree. I would never, ever, because I was the one that proposed this in May, the real changes of why we're sitting here today. Then we'll get into that in a minute, but I'm going to stay germane to this discussion. So I agree with you, and I'm going to make the following motion, which is, you can make a motion underneath the motion, which is appropriate. I'm amending your motion, that after because you've already changed the 55 to 70, is that correct?
Well, no, that hasn't been made yet.
Oh,
so we can either vote on this, or you can make an amendment to the amendment.
Okay. So it would say blank, whatever the amount you guys we're going to decide on. This policy and administrative rules shall be reviewed by the board. Very simple. Shall be reviewed by the board. So strike, superseded, blah, blah, blah.
Is there a second?
That does what Mike,
Are you
Tim,
putting an amount? I'm just trying to get stuff for the minutes. Are you putting an amount in there?
No, that's the part of the main motion. This is a
Okay, so you're
secondary
just
amendment.
changing that
Can we
part,
change,
okay.
instead of reviewed by the board, can you change that to that it will be placed on the agenda, on the board agenda within 2 meetings? Which is what one of the other policies says, that if 2 board members request something, it's placed on the agenda within 2 meetings, and so we'd keep that similar language. And
Sure.
instead, and you know, reviewed by the board, I mean, it's just not, I'd rather have a defined what it is. Would you?
Sure.
Can you change it to that?
That would be fine.
Okay. I will second that.
And what number did you pick?
I didn't pick a number. Do you want me to put that number into this motion?
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
70?
Okay.
I will still second it as, yes, with 70 and that it's placed on the agenda within 2 meetings.
Should we restate that to make sure people understand?
Yeah, can you reword, can you?
I'll read it.
Okay.
Sure, I'll read
So,
it.
Thank you.
However, to maintain the financial integrity of the nonprofit school nutrition program, anytime the negative balance of the program reaches $70,000, this policy and administrative rules shall be reviewed by the board within 2 meetings.
So then, for clarity's sake, to accommodate Chris's request, do we need to have a time? Is it like by the end of a month, or by the end of a semester, or by the end of a something, so it's not a rolling monitor?
For the amendment, no, because we're supposed to get a report every board meeting on the deficiency.
Okay.
Correct.
So the board should trigger automatically since they're already receiving that report.
Okay.
That's going to be in the monthly financials in the consent agenda, right?
Correct.
And so then this will trigger, instead of us just seeing it in the consent agenda, according to the motion at $70,000, it will automatically be moved from consent agenda to discussion agenda to force the board to have that conversation.
Correct.
See, I don't think that achieves the goal I was looking for. It really doesn't. But I can still support it. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to get my way on everything in life, right?
I am going to support this. Again, like Bill, you've stated in the past, always looking for the reasons why things are happening. I think this allows a future board to understand why are the balances increasing. Is it because it's too expensive to have the high schoolers eat the same type of meal as younger kids, and it just allows for further discussion.
I appreciate it because it keeps the board accountable for this not spiraling in a direction that, whether it happens or not, because of the reasons you stated in terms of the audit comments and potential impact on future interest rates. So I appreciate that it does hold this board and future boards accountable to managing that amount and paying attention to it.
Any other comments? Okay, so let's go through this.
So you'll be voting on the amendment to the amendment.
Yep. So all those in favor of the amendment to the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 6-0. Okay, now back to the amendment. Any other comments?
So for clarity's sake, if we supported the amendment to the amendment, what's the proper action to be consistent?
You will vote on the amendment to the original motion as amended.
So that means yes if we agree.
Yes.
Thank you.
No. So you just confused me when you said that. Say that again.
Okay, so there was an original motion on the table.
Bill's
for
original amendment.
For the original policy, there was an original amendment or motion. Mr. Talbot moved, Mr. Esposito seconded an amendment to the policy as presented.
Okay.
Mr. Rosser made a motion to amend the amendment, the motion to amend. Mr. Rasmussen seconded it. We've approved the amendment to the amended motion. Now we're back on the motion to amend as amended. I know that was clear as mud,
It's
but
easy for you.
That's right. You got it,
I
Chris.
think I've got it down.
You do.
All right, any further discussion? Proceed to vote on the amendment to the amendment. No, amendment.
No. To the amendment
as
to
amended.
Amendment, yeah, the amendment
as
as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Passes 6-0. All right, on to the motion.
No,
Now the
okay.
main,
Yep.
Yeah, now the
All
main
those
motion.
in favor of the motion say aye.
Well,
Aye.
I want to make a couple, we're on to the main motion, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to actually bring us full circle back to why we're here. We've spent a little bit of getting the details, and I appreciate that, because what brought us to this 2 years ago was, an inappropriate balance in this, and what are we going to do about it as a school district? But in May, I did bring forward the proposal to do pretty much what is before us today, and what I feel very happy with, and I appreciate my board members supporting this ultimate resolution to this issue with a lot of input from community members and some good thoughts about other changes that we'll be making down the road to automatic withdrawals from accounts and such for parents' convenience. I think those are all going to be positive changes. But this revised policy really makes 3 clear statements to our community. First, it says that food shaming of children in our community is not acceptable. We're now no longer going to do that, whether it's at the elementary school or middle school or high school. Secondly, it says children shouldn't be used and won't be used any longer to coerce parents to pay their children's lunch charges. Children shouldn't be used in that manner. And lastly, it states clearly that it is the responsibility of the parents or guardians to pay their children's lunch charges in a timely manner. It is not the children's responsibility. They don't have the wherewithal to do that. It is the parents' responsibility. And we will do everything in our power as a school district to ensure that parents and guardians stand up to those responsibilities. Thanks.
I wasn't going to say something, but the thing I struggle with is in addition to what we try to teach in our schools, part of that is teaching responsibility and accountability to our students. And so when I went through Northwood, I had a punch for lunch, and I'd watch that thing go down throughout the days. And when I got to the end of the punch, I had to go talk to my parents about getting a new punch ticket. And so I think I'm saddened by the fact that, in essence, we've taken away responsibility from our kids, whether it's middle school, high school specifically, to help in that process, because I think it teaches great life lessons that we've now taken out. So part of our education is a lot broader than just what we're teaching in our classrooms.
Actually, Director Durdorf, that's not the case. Students, when they go through the line, will still be told how much money is in their accounts. And, whether they're elementary, middle, or high school, they'll still be able to go home to their parents and say, hey, I only have $5. And they're going to continue to get the emails from the district when their account gets below $25. So none of that's going to change. So I disagree with your assessment there of the cards, because that's not true. The students are still going to know what's in those accounts, and they're still going to have the opportunity to go to home and say, hey, did you put more money in my account today?
Well, we can agree to disagree. Move forward. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 6-0. Move on to our next item. Public forum. We have one person wishing to speak. Residents of the district, students attending the district, parents or guardians of students attending the district, and district staff may address the board about any topic relevant to the district, whether on the current agenda or not. Those who wish to speak must sign at the beginning of the meeting. Speaker participation is limited to 3 minutes once per board meeting. The views and opinions of citizens addressing the board do not necessarily reflect those of the board, district administration, or staff. Speakers are to remember that Iowa law prohibits the board from discussing specific employees, students, or their performance. Student speakers will state their name and school, others will state their name and address. We have Alex Jakobsen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really didn't plan to distract your discussion. My goal was actually to bring some maybe ideas and solution. This was my plan. I also planning from the beginning to apologize in board members because I didn't realize some parents really passed the lines, in my opinion. I'm kind of fine to to put a little spice during discussion, but when I hear board members was called different names, I think it's inappropriate and it doesn't help to bring solution. So again, my plan was apologize and bring my opinion. I absolutely support idea children should have pay parents' failure. It's obligation our society to care older people and kids. Now, I absolutely agree parents should be able to feed their kids. If parents not able to feed his own kid, probably kids in really bad environment because it's a basic needs to feed the kids. So at the same time, I don't really care about parents, but I say it's parents' responsibility. I more care about what's example to give to other kids. If parents doesn't pay lunch but they still receive, it's create kind of cultural education of not to be responsible. It means somebody else pay for you. So I believe parents should pay. Same time, I understand some parents struggle to pay. Life sometimes it can be hard, you know, situation can be hard. And if you have like 3-4 children to pay $500, it could be hard. So I planning to bring solution. Maybe we create some volunteering program, and instead of chasing $100 and from this $100 to pay $39, maybe we allowed people to receive favor to community. It's more complicated what Mr. Talbot bring. I appreciate he tried to bring solution. It's more complicated, but I believe it's left much less anger, because in my personal, I'd be really ashamed if I don't have money to pay, but I become myself and just help to school and say, look, I don't have money right now. How I can help? Wipe the tables, mop the floor, make some landscape. It's also save money for the school district. So it'd be my personal solution, but if people don't come, maybe we help them to understand we try to help them. It's other way, just accept, force them to pay, especially if they don't have. This is my plan, but how it's a build, it's look like you guys not interested to hear parents' opinion. I'm sorry if I'm not clear. I know it's sometimes hard to understand me because my broken English. Please ask me. I'd be glad to explain. This doesn't help to me bring these ideas, because it's built. Okay, we make decision and you speak later, and this reason why I try to stand and try to speak. So it's again leave me bad feeling. You guys maybe understand parents are mad from both of sides. Some parents who believe food should be provided, but some parents don't agree. They need to pay on other kids' lunch. That means need to be responsibility. But anyway, it's give me feeling when you didn't allow to speak parents during discussion, you still have big gap of communication. So, but again, my plan was bring solution and apologize. Now I speak about you guys still don't listening the parents. So I feel now useless to speak it because you already took this decision. So what's the point to speak after? So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next item is discussion item on the municipal.
Can I was 2 minutes late?
Sure.
Can I please have a few minutes? And I'll fill this out in a second. I'm Susan Stewart. I live at 3121 Beckley Street, and I have some points I'd like to make. I've been involved with this for over, 6 weeks ago, since May. This is a very serious issue. It's not a matter of a child calling up mom and dad for an ice cream. It is not that. And it's not a matter of loopholes, although I appreciate that, you know, could possibly sometimes happen, but that is not the main reason for the debt. Also, you lack science. You can't say that this policy produced a reduction in the debt without a scientific approach. There were lots of other things that changed during that time. I'm a scientist. I know this. I'd be happy to take on this, you know, and help out and do a study, a real study that controls for variables that all of you did not control for or consider. But in this case, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a professor, I'm a mom, and that's why I got involved with this in the first place. I'm very disheartened that Bill Talbot takes such a dim view of humanity. I happen to think that people are good and they try to do the right thing. I also take issue that bringing back the policy, which people are going to squawk about, believe me, this is not going to be popular when they hear about this today. I guarantee it. I don't think it's going to happen because of the reasons, I mean, I think it's, but the point that you all amended this to, which confirms your attitude about the community, that they're going to take advantage, is appalling, really appalling. And so hundreds of people are going to get on Ames People, and they're going to complain, and they're going to talk about how awful this is, that you would reinstitute this draconian policy. Not that it wouldn't, not that I think it's going to happen, because I don't, but it's the thinking behind it. Moreover, at the policy meeting, I asked Tim Taylor about throwing away the lunches, and I finally got someone, Kate from Chartwell's, to admit in a public setting that those lunches were thrown in the trash. Finally, someone said, that's what's happened to the lunches. Now I asked, okay, now that we're not using up 2 lunches for kids with a negative balance, one in the trash and one to give to them, I thought, well, that must represent cost savings then with the revised policy because you're only giving out 1 lunch. Makes sense to me. No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter to the budget, which indicates to me that the lunch policy, the lunch shaming policy in the first place did not save any money at all. So why would you bring back a policy that has 0 impact on the budget? That makes 0 sense to me, unless it's simply that the kids feel shamed and then they go to mom and dad and say, you know, that's not the way. Again, using children being shamed to get money. So it is related. It is not related to lunch shaming. And I don't understand all the ins and outs of the budget, but I know this. I talked to Chartwell's, Kate from Chartwell's, and this is what I learned. I learned that the cashiers are excited about the new policy because it'll make it so much easier, and they don't have to throw away the kids' lunches, which of course they hate doing and feel really bad about. I also learned from Kate that she had never seen that Word document that you wrote up for me, Chris, the night before you gave it to me. She didn't know what that was. And again, it's not a policy, it's procedures, as I was corrected by Rodney Briggs, procedures. She didn't know what that was. Throwing the lunches away quietly, she had never seen that. I don't know, I still don't know where that came from. Did not come from a manual, it had no letterhead on it. You said you were going to write it up for me. That is crazy and indicates this disconnect between your decisions and what's going on the ground. Now, she said to me, as soon as she heard what happened to my daughter, there was a mistake, and my daughter actually had a positive 70-cent balance and should have gotten a lunch. She said she went right over to the middle school and interviewed those cashiers, and nobody, you know, nobody said what had happened. You know, nobody acknowledged that they made a mistake. That's fine. I understand. These cashiers are low paid. They're worried about their jobs, as we heard from people in the community. And if they make a mistake, especially over this, they, might get fired, who knows? So, and then I learned from Kate that she is the only manager that goes around to all the schools in the district. There's a lead at each school, but she is a single individual, and she's not been even working at Chartwell's for, I believe, even a year. And to expect her to do all of that and only work through one individual, Chris Stenslin, and I appreciate you have a huge amount of work on you. You can't possibly manage all these details with no written policy anywhere. I haven't been in the cafeteria and I haven't been in the kitchen, but I certainly hope that there is some kind of written document, and I want to see the training materials that go to, when this new policy is enacted, that goes to Chartwell's, and I'll put in another public information request so that I can see that, and I hope certainly that I can see that and share that with the community, because obviously it didn't happen before. So I'm incredibly disheartened that you would even consider bringing this back when you can't prove that this policy in the first place was the reason for the reduction in the debt. What percentage reduction of the debt is this policy responsible for? You can figure that out statistically, but you're not interested in that. I think that's all I have to say. I didn't even need my notes because I've been thinking about this for a long time. And I am very sad that you're not connecting, some of you, this budget problem with lunch shaming. And if you do have an amendment and you put it on the new school board, which I certainly hope that we have, 3 new people, that they would never bring back the alternative lunch situation, given that it doesn't represent any cost savings. Why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I certainly wouldn't be behind any bringing back a policy without some kind of study, a good study, to support what it is you're doing. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Hey, Susan, did you just sign the form?
Thank you for taking your time and coming together to resolve as best we can the policy at hand. And there's one question I do have, which is confusing to me. We keep hearing that parents are taking advantage of the situation, that there's a loophole. But if parents are taking to collection agency, which is also a credit agency, they're going to end up paying more, 38% of whatever they owe, plus whatever other fees they have, plus they're going to mess up their credit, and now they have to deal with attorneys. So the loophole, and maybe I'm missing something, and I don't know enough about that because I haven't been sent to a credit collection agency before. But it would seem to me that if you end up having to pay more and you could lose your credit, that's not really a loophole. You're not gaining anything as a parent, the same way that if the school ended up losing their bond because of credit, we're not gaining anything. So I want to ask, what exactly is the loophole? Because it doesn't seem like it. Perhaps there should be another way to call this, because nobody's getting away with anything. The other thing I do want to ask is it possible when we send the policy that we could send the policy also in Spanish, in Chinese, in other languages? We have such a diverse community, and we have a lot of professionals who do not speak, write, or read English, but they do read, write, their language. Is it possible to do something? I'm not saying change the whole policy, translate everything, but translate so they could understand. They could come and talk to you or someone in your office. If you guys need help with someone, I speak Spanish. I'm very fluent in Spanish, somewhat in French and Italian. I'll be more than happy to volunteer and help out. But I think if we do this and we have a positive communication with our community members, we're going to see a more positive attitude, and I think this will help the deficit. I think part of it, from the people I've spoken to who do not speak English, is that they don't understand all these emails they're getting. They don't understand this policy that they're getting, and there's nothing in their language to help them understand. When they call the office, nobody speaks their language, so there's a huge miscommunication. So if you ever needed someone to help you with Spanish, I'm more than happy. I could email you my number, but I think being able to translate is going to help a great deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? No. You can't at the end of the discussion item. Next one. Anyone else? All right, moving on. Discussion item, municipal pool joint use agreement extension. We've invited some city people to join us for our discussion, so yeah, that'd be great, Steve. This kind of follows our last board meeting, and the discussion went forward on kind of where we want to go with the extension. Again, the extension expires here at the end of June, and so we just want an opportunity for the board to ask questions and talk about. Yeah, go ahead. Thanks. Oh.
Start from both sides.
We have Keith Abraham and Steve Shanker here with us. Sorry to introduce.
Did have a conversation with City Manager Steve Shanker relative to the extension following our last board meeting, and Steve actually made the request, and I appreciated that, to come forward and talk a little bit about the financial, municipal pool financial information that may help with the amendment. The amendment that came forward on the municipal pool joint use agreement extension from Mr. Rosser included language about shared revenue. And Steve, I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
this point. Yeah.
Appreciate the board allowing me to have a few minutes to at least provide you information before you take a final action on this particular issue. I know you tabled it, and there's some suggestion of revenue sharing. I just thought I'd give you some information that give you some background on it, because I don't want the board or even the public to say we're making a lot of money off this particular venture. And I think over the 50 years we've been together, the citizens of Ames, not only the people in your school district, but all the parents and adults and children that aren't attending school there have benefited from this cooperative relationship. And one thing that makes Ames great, I think, is because government entities like Iowa State University, the city, and the school district partners as many times as they can. It helps save the citizens money. So I'm here to urge you to at least extend the existing agreement, but I know I would like to provide you some information. Keith was gone last week, and I put this together myself quickly, so I want to emphasize one change in this. But at the top, try to make this as simple as possible, because I can't deal with numbers that well myself. So municipal pool shared expenses, the way the agreement reads right now, and what I'm showing you now is 2017-18. That's the budgeted amount that will start July 1st. We don't have the final numbers in, and I didn't want to go back to 15-16. These numbers will change, you understand, but they give you a relative look at what we do. Right now, according to the agreement, the school district manages the pool and then charges us back, I think on a quarterly basis, is it? Yes. And I went through, these are to the left under expenses are the typical items that are charged to the city to help share 50-50 in. So it's electric, water, sewer, gas. If there's any labor that's up there to fix something that's sent up there, we share the cost. Pool repairs, and then we share, I believe, 1/2 of 1 FTE for your custodian up there. So it all adds up to about $90,000. That's what we're budgeting. It could come in at $100,000, could come in at $80,000, but that's what we're projecting on our side of the budget. I don't know what the school district is for the project, and we've broken it down by our case line item or object codes for our specific items. I want to emphasize that 50-50 share, and I don't know how you feel, but that's relatively inexpensive to operate a pool, both of us, for $45,000 a piece. Now, it is not an adequate facility, and that's why it's so cheap, quite frankly. We're band-aiding the facility. The school district is doing an excellent job helping us maintain it, and we know we're not putting any extra money into it. What I want everybody to know, if we ever go to a larger pool, either together or separately, the cost of operations is going to be significantly higher than it is today. I imagine that. It's like you have an older car or a house and you don't put much money in, you get a brand new car or a bigger house, it's going to cost you money. And also I want to emphasize that the school district in this city also may or share costs of capital improvements, those large one-time physical improvements to the facility. That's not included in this total. And I think we're looking ahead at, as you know, the air quality situation. I think you're leading and Keith and Jerry are looking at that, and I don't know if Tim and I haven't seen any final recommendations if there's going to need a capital improvement to take care of the situation on the short term. Because I think, like it or not, whether we part ways in the future or go together, probably we're not going to have a swimming pool for at least 2 more seasons, I would think. That's conservative, maybe 3. So if the relationship continues, we're prepared to invest in that facility with capital improvements. So that's the municipal pool side, and you subsidize it by $45,000 if the budget comes in. It's varied over the years, but that's about what it is. And then we put in, the citizens of Ames and the city council puts in $45,000. Now we do have other revenues that maybe you're thinking about sharing or start sharing, but I want you to understand that we apply a lot of revenues to help cover the cost of both the Furman outdoor facility and municipal pool, the indoor facility. Now what I try to do is, this is hard, I try to isolate just the cost of municipal pool, and I made one mistake which I'll correct, but the programs we have, we try to generate revenue to cover our programs, we call programming. So for the indoor pool, it would be lap swimming, open swim, instruction and certification training, okay, those kind of programs. And because we operate those, we have to have lifeguards in there. We have shift leaders who kind of manage the building, okay, when the people are in the building. We charge ourselves for computers, data processing. If there's a phone in there, we pay. And also certification costs, let's say the Red Cross, we have to make payments there. We have commodities too, office cleaning supplies, equipment, not much, $1,700. But the expenses add up to $184,000. Obviously, the largest part is staff, is probably you experience too, and the role involved with that. And then we have revenues too. This is what you're all interested in, I'm sure. You can rent the pool if you have a birthday party or whatever, some kind of party, you can rent there, not much revenue. We have daily admissions, and then I've tried to isolate the season passes for winter. Obviously, you're not going to buy you're not going to use a Furman during the winter months. So I've tried to allocate that revenue to this. And then all of these instructional fees, certification training and everything, what we receive. So that's $159,000. Now, where I made my mistake, and I want you to put asterisk by the 184 and the 159, I could have taken it a step further. Most of those certification or instructions take place in the indoor pool, municipal pool. But I think there's about 4 weeks that we do have some of those instructions out in the Furman. I've included it all here, okay? Now, if I just want to tell you, if I would take those numbers out, if I take the expenditure out and take the revenue and move it off to Furman, it would balance out at least. You know, we may have excess revenue even, but it would balance out. So I think, even though I included those 4 weeks of revenue and expenditures in here for the, you know what I'm saying, for the expenditures, we're looking at next year, this is what we budgeted for, $25,000, almost $26,000 of additional subsidy. So we're not making any money. And I want to caution also, you've probably read, we're having difficulty hiring lifeguards. So I've authorized Keith to actually increase up to $2 an hour in additional salary for lifeguards and other attendants out there. That number doesn't reflect that in the budget. So we're going to be under budget. In other words, this deficit, I think, is going to be even larger once we start hiring. And that will cost us also for municipal pool lifeguards as well as the outdoor pool situation. Have I left out?
Yeah, the other thing with it, one of the things that we have found in our research with the lifeguard shortage is that a lot of communities have been paying for certifications. To get their lifeguarding certification, and that's what we did to be able to address our need right now. So potentially what could happen is prior to what we've done recently, we would charge $175 for someone to take a lifeguard class. What we did recently to get additional lifeguards, we said we are not going to charge you for that 175. So our revenue may go down as well. Not only the expenses, but our revenue may go down if we continue that practice, and that's kind of the direction that we're looking at, is paying for that certification and not charging those individuals to take that class.
So in the instruction fees, where we have revenues, it's probably going to be less. Expenditures will be higher, probably the revenue will be less. That's not a good combination, as you know, so probably the actual subsidy will be larger. Just to give you a frame of reference, if I try to isolate the costs in the outdoor pool in the Furman Aquatic Center, I think we have budgeted about $93,000 deficit there. And actually that's pretty good for a large facility like that. Some cities have a lot larger subsidy. So I'm here to answer questions you have. I think no relationship is perfect, no allocation of costs is perfect. I went back and looked, and we do not assign to the municipal pool the cost of property insurance. We insure the building. It's a City of Ames facility that sits on your property. Very important insurance coverage, because if it burns down or a tornado hits it, we want to be able to rebuild it. That's a charge that's not shown here. So we're using these other revenues to help pay for it. Liability insurance. You probably have some liability, maybe you do for your programs, I don't know, but if ACAC or somebody else is in there, or some of the rental programs or free swim, we have to have liability insurance. That's not being charged right now. I'm not complaining, because we have a history of dealing with these line items, and we didn't try to renegotiate that. I'm just trying to say it's not all perfect. I can't say that we've assigned every cost that we're sharing for the building. I'm not looking to change that right now. I'm just trying to extend the status quo for the next 2 to 3 years. I put 3 years in there, and maybe it's sooner. And the agreement also allows either party to get out. If you choose to go separately and you build a pool quicker, then you just have to give us a 90-day notice and you'll be out. So it's not like you're bound. You have an out clause in that existing agreement, if you remember reading that. So it's not a perfect maybe financial situation for either one of us, but it's something we've lived with for many years, and I think our citizens benefit by it. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
So on the instruction fees, does that include the ACAC tag fees, things like that they pay on the revenue side?
That's part of the season passes. Because right now, the arrangement that we have with ACAC is that each one of their members has to buy a pool pass. So that's part of the season pass.
So that's the $19,570.
Right.
Not all of it.
No, not all of it.
No, not all of it, because we do have a number of people that purchase for lap swimming or other activities.
So the instruction fees would be more like swim lessons, those kinds of things?
Swim lessons, lifeguard certification, water safety instructor, that's the portion of that.
Yeah, ACAC is a little different, because I know you all were talking about maybe establishing a lump sum that you transfer in. Ours is based on, if you had a family swimming pass, okay, that would count for your member of ACA. They can swim competitively through ACA practices, but not pay any more. It would count. You wouldn't have to pay an extra cost, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. And then so when ACAC rents either Furman or municipal pool or something for a meet, there's a rental fee that they pay for that, for like a Saturday meet or something?
Yeah, for municipal pool, we do not charge a rental fee.
Yeah, that's a good point. We talk about program fees, and this is why it works, and it's acknowledged in our agreement. I believe I've gone to a swimming meet before, an Ames swimming meet, and they charge revenue for it, as we charge for our open and daily mission. So we generate revenue to go to our programming. I believe that there's a mission fee charged, and that revenue goes to the school. It goes to the athletic department. It seems reasonable to me, because there's probably cost of coaching and other stuff. There's revenue. Someone asked me a couple months ago about being charged ACAC when the city charging for meets at the municipal. That is not us. I believe that's a school district to cover their costs. So that's revenue that's going to you, not us. We clarify that. So what I'm trying to point out, there is revenue that goes back to each party. And that's okay, because you have to cover your costs. with meets or whatever, and you're getting separate revenue, it's not coming in.
So similarly, if ACAC has a meet there on a Saturday, when they're collecting a gate, whatever that is, that's their gate. It's not a school district gate or a city gate.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah, I don't know if they pay you
They collected a gate?
to use it, though, you know what I mean?
No.
Did you get a percentage of the gate? I don't even know how it works.
No, they're not.
Do you get a percentage of the gate, or is there a fee? I mean, an hourly fee? Yeah, I don't know.
No. For the record, the club has never charged a gate for anyone. The swimmers pay an entry fee for a meet, but no parent or no adult or any other family member or whatever has ever paid an admission charge to come into a swim club meet. There are some clubs that do that at their meets. It has never been done locally. So.
And how are you charged by the hour for the use of the facility?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I believe when I spoke with.
I've never been on board with them.
That I think the last couple of years when they have done they have 2 meets, one in October, one in February at the high school, and they've been charged a rental fee to cover cost of custodian and some of those items. But that's been paid right directly to the school district. When they have their Rock the Blocks meet at Furman Aquatic Center, we do charge them a fee. It was part of the thing because we are, blocking off the 50-meter pool for 3 days. But I want to say that's less than $500 a day is what they're paying. Now, if somebody else rents one basin, they pay $125 an hour for the pool. So they're getting it all day for basically 3 hours of rental fee.
So my point of bringing this up, I want to make sure, I'm not being critical of the school district doing it. I'm pointing out it makes sense. You're doing what we're doing. You're trying to, there's some fees involved to cover costs for your programming. That's my point.
Yeah, I think you were making the point about the only fees that I'm aware of related, Chris, to ACAC's meets is the janitorial fees that are covered with that, or possibly the use of a gym space. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything for ACAC. Where we might have revenues is when we're holding a swim meet within the swim season. There's entry fees from the other schools to participate.
That goes to the athletic department?
Yes, it's through the student activity fund.
Yeah, that's something separate. That's not ACAC. I do have a couple questions on the numbers that you've got here. First of all, on the expenses that you've listed for $157,000, is that just the municipal expenses, or does that include Furman?
$184,000.
Underneath you've got personnel expenses of $157,484. Is that just for Furman or both?
No, that $157,484 is just municipal pool.
That's just municipal?
Except for the one exception that Steve mentioned earlier, is that for 4 weeks during the summer, we have swim instruction, swim lessons at Furman Aquatic Center, and those swim instructor salaries are included in here. So that, but other than that, everything else is related to municipal pool.
So it doesn't include your lifeguards out at Furman?
Correct.
It just includes your instruction?
Just the 4 weeks in the summertime.
But the revenue is in the 159, so if you move it in, that 4 weeks, the expenditures over to Furman, the revenue would go with it.
Correct. And then down underneath revenues, you only listed the season passes for winter. Do you have the total for what your summer passes are?
Well, our summer passes are probably in the neighborhood of about $250,000.
Okay.
But there's a lot of those passes are people just utilizing the Furman Aquatic Center.
Correct. And then, actually, I know you can do this, but the breakdown for ACAC winter passes and summer passes, I know you have that number. Do you have it with you?
You mean as far as what they pay us?
Correct.
Okay. I don't have the exact number, but I can tell you that based on their averages over the last several years, last 5 years, which they average about 136 swimmers in the wintertime and about 117 swimmers in the summertime. If we were to and they would get a discount on an individual pass. So if we charge every one of those 136 or the 117 for the course of the year, it would be, I think it's right around $18,000 is what we would get for passes.
For $18,000 for passes from ACAC for the whole year?
Yes.
That's way off what they're telling us that they're paying you. They're telling us, and I've seen the numbers,
Yep.
and I used to serve on their board, that they're recently telling us that they're paying you anywhere from $30,000 to $35,000 in fees. So whether it's fees in pool tags and fees at the Furman, those are the other fees that they pay you, correct?
Just for just for their individual passes.
Correct. They don't pay you any other fees.
No.
So where would those other fees be?
I don't know.
Okay.
Because I've always used an average of about $20,000, thinking that if there were 150 swimmers, and again, what we do is anybody that has a pass in the past year, they get a discount when they buy their next pass. So right now, an individual might only be paying $70 for that pass, when they purchase it.
Yeah, but you know who all those people are, because I know at the beginning of each season, you send the list to the club and they check and make sure that everyone pays it. So you know who all those people are. So you can generate that list of what ACAC is being charged by you in the winter and in the summer, and we should be able to see those revenues.
Yeah.
Okay, I would like to see that.
We can
because
get
it's
that
not
for
here.
You. Yeah, we can get that for you, but it's not going to be $35,000 to $40,000.
Well, so who's not telling us the truth?
It'll be what it is. We'll get you.
Yeah, we'll get you that number.
Okay.
But just remember, when they buy a pool pass, their whole family can use it. They're users, they use the pool, not just in the competitive.
I know, I buy it.
I just want to make sure everybody understands that.
I buy it, I know. It's a deal up to when you have 3 or more swimmers in the family, then it's worthwhile getting the family one. Then you go below 3, then it's not so much.
No, what I'm trying to point out, even if you're a competitive swimmer and you practice, sometimes they come out for recreation and just enjoy running through the slides.
Sure.
They're contributing to our demand, and we have to have lifeguards for all those things.
Correct. Also to point out something related to that expense that you're talking about, when the club uses the facility at municipal, they are not, you as a city are not incurring any lifeguard charges, because during the use by the club, there is no requirement per USA Swimming requirements for a lifeguard to be present, because all of the coaches are certified lifeguards.
Correct.
So that's saving you money when they're in the pool. Well, not saving you money, but that's not an expense that you have to endure and carry. So again, what motivated me to bring up this issue in the first place is that for an awful long time, we've been sharing the operating costs, but we've ignored the expenses. And I think we should stop ignoring the expenses of both sides, since we're both contributing to the operational upkeep of that building. Then before we split the cost and share our each, half, let's be honest and put all of our expenses on top of the list first, and then after that's all figured out, what those expenses are. Revenue.
Wouldn't you want to move the expenses in there too? You just take the revenue side.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about, so what we're doing right now is taking our expenses and then dividing that in half and paying that, the school district and the city.
Yeah, but I'm trying to say, we don't set fees right now for 50 years, neither the school or us, for our programs. We haven't set fees to try to recoup those costs. We're just trying to cover the program costs, and we're not even doing that.
Right.
Now, if you want to raise fees even farther, I can understand that, but your fees are not set to recoup those costs.
But I don't want the school
district. It's a different philosophy.
Well, here's my philosophy, that for over 40 years, because of the fact that we haven't factored in revenue, The school district has been subsidizing that facility.
No,
It has.
I don't think that's fair.
Well, whether you feel it's fair or not, that doesn't matter to me. The facts are, because we haven't included the revenue in the calculations of the operating of that facility, the school district has been subsidizing the programs that the city runs. And I don't think we should continue to do that.
So what should be our cost that we should pay to the city to have use of that facility since it's their building?
Pardon me?
What should be the cost that we pay to the city for use of that facility since it's not our building? There should be a cost because it's their building.
We should share the cost. We should share the operating cost. That's the agreement. I have no problems with that. But we should look at also include the revenues into the equation of what those costs are.
But people are paying for that revenue to help for lifeguards and everything. All I'm saying is, if you want to throw the revenue, all the revenue, that's fine. You should throw all the costs in too.
Right. I agree.
I'm trying to show you, if you throw all the costs in, you're going to come away owing more money as a school district.
If his numbers are correct here, you're basically asking us to subsidize this for an additional $12,500.
Not you.
I'm not.
No, he's not. You. That's what I'm saying. Director Rosser, you are asking for the district to take on additional expenses for pool operation. If these numbers are correct, obviously we would have to go over these numbers and have our people go over these numbers and verify every last item. But if these numbers are correct or close to correct, you're asking for us to subsidize this at a higher level.
No, because I don't think these are correct, and that's why I said, we need to look at closer what those revenues are and how they're broken down regarding the club, because I've been told and I've seen the information. Did Dr. Taylor leave?
Yeah, he had to leave.
Oh, okay. The information that we've, for several months, been talking with ACAC about what their revenue stream is, what they pay the city, is nowhere near what it says here.
I think maybe a clarification, Director Rosser.
Okay.
I want to make sure that because this is getting confusing for me. The revenues we are looking at under the season passes for winter, $19,570. That is just the revenue for the season passes for municipal pool. We are not discussing the money for Furman because the school district has nothing to do with Furman.
Right.
So I guess I would appreciate an official statement from ACAC. I talked to the vice president on my way here, and according to him, they pay $25,000 to $30,000 in these seasonal passes, which covers for them. He verified for me what you said, Keith, that their expenses are the passes that their swimmers pay to the city, and then they pay for their fee to rent Furman. So that is it for their expenses. So if I look at this, if their season passes, I guess maybe what we need to clarify is maybe you need to break down for us those winter season passes and how many are ACAC and how many are not. But to me, I want to make sure that we're clarifying that I don't have any interest in the money going to Furman because that's not our facility.
Are you trying to focus on the ACAC money? Is that what you're trying to show?
Well, that's a big part of it, primarily. I'm just saying is that we, city, school district, are paying to maintain that facility.
Correct.
Okay?
Correct.
So whatever programs are going on in that facility, whatever revenue is being generated by that facility, should be factored in when we figure out what it costs every year to operate it. And then we'll split the costs.
But if we know that, we're all going to have to adjust our fees to not only cover our operating costs for our programs, but now to help pay for the facility itself, these $90,000. The fees were never set to do that. In other words, if it was $30,000 a year that ACA, is giving, how many hours do you rent it? I mean, what does that come out to an hour cost? Do you have any idea? Did anybody ever say? At $30,000, how many hours does anybody know what ACA rents in a year? We can figure that out. Would you be surprised if it came in a very low number? Would you say maybe if we're going to start doing this, we have to start raising fees for everybody? If this is a new philosophy, But you can't take the existing fees, and you didn't say anything about the athletic department fees. I guess you want to throw that in there too. I'm sure you would be consistent. In other words, what money that's going to the athletic department and the school district has to be thrown in there and split.
I think the challenge too
You wouldn't
is-
want us to subsidize the athletic department. I mean, it's a whole different philosophy here, which is fine, but we're going to have to start looking at it. Maybe we need to start throwing in the liability insurance, you know, all the stuff that maybe we don't put in there now. We don't have liability or property insurance for the municipal pool. It's not in there now. The fees do not try to recoup that. But maybe that's a legitimate charge. If we're going to start doing it right, you know, if you think we're not doing it correctly, maybe we have to have a whole new philosophy.
Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but we carry liability insurance as part of our school district for the pool, don't we?
Yes, for
Yeah.
our program.
Yeah.
But not
So
for ours.
that's already
Wait,
there.
not for ours. We have other people. We have other groups that use it.
Correct. And ACAC has their own insurance.
How about
and
property
groups.
insurance?
Right.
I don't think the schools, they shouldn't carry property insurance, it's not their building.
I don't know. I'd have to defer.
It's not on our schedule of.
No, it's our building, we should do that.
Yeah,
That's the cost.
right, because you own the building, right. But again, I just think we should look at this differently, and we should because we do have, you know, other expenses that we don't factor in here. We have the cost of our high school coaches.
So Louis, spitball it for me. What do you think this is worth to the district? So I'm not going to call these guys liars and say these numbers aren't right. So
We'll check.
so if this is right, how do you think the school district stands to be enriched if we have a new philosophy? We getting 10,000 more? We getting 20,000 more? We getting 100,000 more? What?
I think we get more than what we're having to pay out and operate. I think our
So
operating costs
we
will
get
go down.
revenue but no expense, or we get so much more revenue and so much more expense?
I don't know, because I'm not seeing, what I'm being told, and from the information that we were given as a school district in the past 6 months by ACAC, are not the numbers that are reflected here. So I would like to see a breakdown for the winter passes for ACAC. I would like to see the breakdown for summer passes for ACAC, because not only do they use the Furman Aquatic Center during the summer, they also use municipal. They use both in the summer.
But do you think we're entitled to that ACAC revenue?
In the summer?
Don't care. Do you think as a school district we're entitled to that revenue?
Oh, I'm not saying we're entitled. I think that, Mike, the revenue, if we just continue to split the costs, I said this when I brought this up, they're getting all the revenue. We don't get anything. So all we're doing is paying the operating costs. And we're not bringing in any revenue whatsoever. They're taking in all the revenue, and they get to keep it. So they can then take that revenue and reduce the amount that they're spending on their operating costs.
So what do you, I think you're the only one seeing it this way. I think everybody else in the room is confused by it. So I'm trying to distill it down into, what do you think we're entitled to, or how does this?
It's not an entitlement issue, but it's, I think that.
How does that help? What does it look like? Do you think we get 50,000 in revenue and that helps to offset our?
I think it reduces what we end up having to pay in operating costs. That's what I'm hoping once we get, and I'm not accusing you of bringing us false numbers. I'm just saying it needs to be broken down differently so we can look at it differently.
Are you saying it's just the ACAC money that you want to share? Is that what you're doing?
No, I'm not. Yeah, I think it's a big.
All the revenue that we
punch
generate to cover lifeguards and everything else, and you want to share that?
In relationship to municipal pool, yes.
Then you need to bring all those expenses, with it. And what Steve has kind of gone through and handed out to you, again, I think whoever said it, you're going to wind up increasing, your subsidy in the long run.
So Steve, as far as from the council's position, I guess your recommendation, would the council likely be supportive of this? Again, you can't talk for them, but you think they would be supportive of moving this forward. The one thing that we talked about at the last board meeting was a wrap-up scenario. So within this contract, we don't talk about what happens when the building needs to be raised. who's responsible for that. So I'm not gonna put you on the spot here, but we need to think through how should we talk about that. My preference would be to approve this with the thought of we're going to bring back an amendment to this contract that outlines for both the council and the school district who's going to be responsible for those costs.
I'm sorry, what did you call it?
Well, when the building, the demolition of the municipal, when that happens, whatever happens as far as our agreements to build new facilities, we need to have that outlined instead of dealing with it when it hits.
Just seemed like it was better to get the demolition part of it into a contract now rather than 3 years from now when the time comes. Just to start having those discussions or at least get the ball rolling.
I think it's good. I mean, I understand you have to resolve them.
Yeah.
We have a lot to resolve and work together. Again, to determine whether you're going to be with us, be separate, or we may be back with you. You know what I mean? Hopefully, we'll have that opportunity as another alternative. So,
Actually,
I hope we're going to be together in the future, either way. But
that was going to be actually my question, Steve. Can you I know the feasibility study is starting, so can you sort of lay out how you envision that getting to a point where council and board at the time can say, all right, here's what it looks like, what do you think?
Yeah, you have that schedule there in any chance? Well,
For the planning study?
yeah, no, all the way through. I'm trying to remember it for your timings, you know. So we just met today, and by the way, we're talking about hiring a consultant to do the study, feasibility study, planning study, and I've asked a number of people to assist me on developing the recommendation. Jerry Peters is on that committee with me, so he'll be intimately involved in help pick the consultant. So they submitted their proposals yesterday. We just got them. We're going to evaluate them. I think we go have interviews by the end of July. We'll have end of July. Then I think hopefully we'll go to the council hiring August 8th. And one of the criterion that's in there is how quickly they can do the project. And you know better than I, this is a pretty complex project. It could take 4 months to do, maybe 6 months at the most. I know it scares everybody. I'll just say 6 months at the most. So that gets you to, where does that get you to? That gets you to
February.
At that point, we're also, they're going to be a separate group trying to raise money. Remember, there'll be a gap probably. They're going to have to get donations to fill in. This is the Healthy Lifestyle Center, which is going to be more than just city funds, hospital funds. So they'll be working. Then we have to pass a bond issue. We have to negotiate agreements with the partners, how we're going to fund it. If the school district's in there, I'm sure you'll want to get involved in how we're going to fund a basin if you're involved with us. So I can't see us moving any quickly, and then you have to educate the public. To be honest, I don't think you're getting any quicker, and this is very ambitious to have a bond issue in August or November of next year. So it would follow your bond issue if that's what you're, as I understand your bond issue in the spring. It will not, I don't believe there's any way it could be before your bond issue in the spring. And I think that's ambitious. I think we can put all these pieces together to be in place for, I think you have an August special meeting, or the national election in November. And that's just, I'm just giving you off the top of my head now. That may slide.
Yeah. And what, as it would relate to that scenario then, and there's some private money to be raised, what's your sense, will, I'll say the city or the hospital or one of the partners kind of finance that private fundraising so it can go forward, or does all the private fundraising need to happen and be buttoned up before a bond vote can happen?
Well, as it sits now, and it may change, it's a substantial amount of the project, maybe almost a third of it will come from private donations, and we are fortunate enough to be the owner of the building. We agreed to do that, so I don't believe we'll be able to issue, I don't think our financial advisors will allow us to issue bonds based on just pledges, so I would think we're going to look to have the money secured in hand before we actually start construction, incur any costs. We may take a risk on the design, but I doubt we'll actually. And by the way, after you pass the bond issue, it could take 6 months or so to design it, right? 6 to 8 months, perhaps.
Sure. So is there a scenario under which you would pass a bond issue, but not all the money was raised yet, and then you got to the point where you could start construction, but still not all the money was raised yet. So it would continue to float out there, and if the private money never came, it might never happen. You might never pull the trigger and sell bonds.
Well, you said we were going to start construction, though, did you not?
No, I didn't. I said, I'm just parroting back. You said we won't start construction until the private money is there.
Yeah.
But you could get a bond issue passed, you could spend some money on design and get ready, but still, if the private money never showed up, is it possible that the project would never happen, or at that point, would the council or who's ever involved would say, hey, we got a gap here, are we willing to fill it, or does it just...
Yeah, it won't be that easy, because if we pass a bond issue, it would say, authorize us to issue up to a certain amount that's going to be projected upon, based upon some level of outside donations, so we can't just increase it if we're short on donations, because the bond issue will have already locked us in. And I don't know if the council, it's always a constant debate, we could go to the public and say, should we issue X amount of bonds if we raise this in the future, or is it better to say, we've got this in hand, and now will you authorize us to increase your taxes for it? I don't know which way is the best strategy. There'll be smarter people than I who will decide that, but that scenario is possible.
And so as it relates to where the allocations of budget come from, probably the feasibility study helps to enlighten some of that. So in other words, by February of next year, everybody will have it to say, hey, yeah, private needs to come up with this, city will do this, Mayor Greeley will, so on and so forth. That unknown won't become, there'll be a theory, but it won't really be more known until the conclusion of the study.
Yeah, the study will lay out their best estimate in 2019 dollars, what this is all going to cost for initial costs and operating costs, annual operating costs, and then everybody, even though we're all been in it, everybody's reserved to say, we may not go if it's too expensive. So, and that's Heartland. And again, I don't know what's going to happen with you all. I don't know when you're going to make your decision. Maybe it's a good question I could ask you. We're putting you kind of in a bad situation. I don't mean to, because you're going to make a decision on a pool or not, right? And if you go, is it the spring for your bond issue? Or, excuse me, will you have to know at that time whether the pool's in or out?
Not necessarily. So the plan, Steve, is to have a special meeting of the board to discuss the options, probably in August, like late July or August. So we know, okay, if it's option A, we go alone, this is the ramifications and understanding the board's going to potentially get into. Option B would be going with you and what those ramifications are. So we've not had that formal discussion yet. But again, that ties in, to answer your question, we don't need to wait on a high school. We have the pool slotted for where it could go, so we could move that forward first before doing a pool.
Yeah.
To that point,
is it slotted maybe for a municipal pool if we have to have a backup? I mean, there's one thing you want, I'm just telling you up front too, you want to make sure you have the ability a guarantee of some kind of sharing the cost of demolition. I'm sure the city, and this puts you in a bad situation, would like you to reserve some land as a backup plan if for some reason the lifestyle center didn't move ahead.
Just for the warm water component.
For a recreation component, not the big life, not the whole system. If that would fail, or we not move on, feasibility proved, we need a new indoor recreation center.
Right. Maybe I can answer your question. In the 3 or 4 examples that the architects have put up for us on the use of the land for whatever building and remodel we end up doing, there is space for a pool. So that was...
City portion, no, for your portion, how about for ours?
Nope.
Just space for a pool.
Yeah.
You think it's big enough? Is it big enough?
I guess that's
no,
a question.
It's tight, huh?
Well, so we've done some concepts. We've got some more concepting and conceiving to do as well. If that becomes a criteria, or if that becomes something we need to be mindful of, then we need to factor it in. But the kicker on that is going to be probably the parking and the accommodation of parking for everybody. Because so right now the answer is we don't know, but it's going to be tight.
All I have to say is, as important as you think that the demolition issues for you, which makes a lot of sense if I was on your board, I think having a backup plan for us is important too, or else we don't have a site. And I'm not saying we're not going to accomplish the Healthy Life Center.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you weren't done, Steve.
I'm sorry.
We've got some serious issues if we have to proceed. I know everybody gets tired of listening to me talk about legal details, but you know, they really do interfere with your plans. If we have to proceed by building a pool with the high school, we cannot use our bond money to partner with the city, because we can't build a pool for city use with school bond money. Unless there's some magic with this new home rule statute that nobody seems to be able to interpret yet.
The way I envision it is that we would build a separate pool on the site, hopefully adjacent to it, and we would find a way to attach them. We build it 100% ours.
Okay.
But if we're smart, we build them together for the synergies because people want to use it and move to and from for swim meets or whatever. So it's really reserving the pad next to your pool.
That's always been in our sketches, but I think the last rendition, that wasn't necessarily in there, but we could, I mean, that's something, you know, that could be
And I hate to say it, I hope we never use it though.
Yeah, no, I hope so too. That it never comes to that.
That means we're successful. I mean, that means we're successful in Healthy Life.
To us being able to make our decision, those requests, your applications for the RFP, are those public information at this point?
No.
Would it be, you guys can discuss this, it would be advantageous to us, I think, to be able to look at those sooner rather than later. If those could be shared, I would appreciate it as a board member to be able to see those and if, with whatever confidentiality you would need. If you can't do it, I understand.
No, let me make sure you understand. There's no diagram or anything like that. This is just trying to hire a consultant to do the study.
It'd still be advantageous to read it, I believe.
Well, all that's not made public until we come forward and we actually recommend somebody. But let me assure you, you have an employee from the school district administrator who's on that team and is reading them all. But it's not fair if those get out publicly right now. Those
Yeah, I know, that'd be the difficult part, and I understand that. And
we're not trying to hold it from you. The city council doesn't see it. That's the way it is. But I guarantee you, when they start developing their plans, that's going to be all public. There'll be public meetings on it. This is to hire the consultant who's going to do the study for us.
Bill, you brought up one point, and you were talking about, you know, mixing of bond money with the pool and the high school and stuff like that. As I understand it, we're not factoring that in at all. We would do the pool completely separate from the bond for the high school.
Yep, correct.
We would use a different silo of money, completely
Well, not necessarily.
related.
Not necessarily. We may use, boy, I'm going to get in the weeds here. We have the capacity to bond roughly $130 million. We're looking at roughly $100 million for the high school. But if it happens like we did with the elementary schools, so we pay the bond off early and try to push down tax rates, we won't want to borrow all of that money on the bond. We'll want to use some sales tax money, some PEPAL money, and we'll want to put together a big combination. What I'm really addressing is I wish somebody from the legislature or some lawyer that works in school issues could come to us and tell us what the heck this home rule statute means, because if we could have different partners, private partners, or if we could actually blend bond money to build something that the city can rent from us, my, what a game changer. But I can't find anybody that can tell me what this home rule statute means. So I'm kind of lost right now, except to say that every drawing I've seen for the high school has enough space for the school to build a swimming pool, and we have the bonding capacity to build it.
Just so you know too, I didn't mention it, but I think I should. In the feasibility study, we're looking at both costing out a stretch pool. I don't know what you call it. Is it a 25-meter stretch, or it's 33? How do I do that?
25-meter stretch is
a
more common
and
term.
Also a 50-meter pool. So that'll be done more than halfway through, because we're going to have to go to the policymakers, meaning the city council, and decide which way we want to go, because then that will affect our footprint and costs and all that. So That was a request from ACAC, and they did, council did put that in there. And I think that's it.
So it sounds like to me, we just need to make sure we're continuing to communicate between our bodies to make sure you know what our plan A, plan B, plan C and D are, whatever it ends up, but also is what the city is looking at in terms of if yes, this passes, if no, it passes. I think I would also challenge us, as I've said before, the timing of the bond issues, because clearly we have a bond issue that we're going to have to move forward with, but there is also going to be a bond issue for the Healthy Life Center. So I think we need to be very much aware and working with our community to identify the timing of those, because clearly they're going to impact one another.
That's correct. We're not rushing to get ahead of you. You want to make sure, I'm almost sure that yours will go first. And we have a lot of information to collect before I can even tell you we're going to have a bond issue, we have a project. Because it's very complex. We've got a lot of parties that have to come together after they see the data and decide to participate. And it's going to be hard. It'll be really powerful. That'll be probably the largest partnership we've ever had. We've usually done one-on-ones. But it'll be complex and it's going to take some time. But as you probably know, the mayor and Luke and Tim and I, we meet periodically and we share those things. And also on the steering committee for the Healthy Life Center, we have representatives from Luke and Tim in those meetings in the past, so they get plugged in how we're proceeding on that project. Whether you participate or not, ultimately, it's important in the school district because a lot of your students and families will utilize that facility. So we're going to make sure it's going to be very transparent to you all. We appreciate you both ways.
And you were talking about those dates with the schedule. Is that something Keith has that he could share with us?
He can send it back to you, or would you like him to send it to you?
I've had that question a couple times.
As long as you know it's tentative, you understand?
Absolutely, but it would just be helpful to have that official word from the city. Thank you.
So to kind of wrap up the discussion, is there a consensus, I guess, I'd like to know where the board members are at to move this forward at the next board meeting, or do we need this information to come back before we make another decision? Where's everyone at on this?
Related to extending the agreement?
The agreement, yeah.
I think we got what we need.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not of the belief that there are revenues there for us to participate in, so
I mean,
I just don't see it.
Is there a major rush? I mean, we're not going to, like, at the end of the month say, you know, we're not doing this anymore. But I guess I would like to see the numbers that I was asking for before, the breakdown for winter season passes and summer passes for ACAC and what those actual revenues are. And then Luke, we can then bring it up at the next meeting for action.
I don't see any problem personally with bringing this up at the next meeting for action, but I don't see that much is going to change. Even if we throw another $30,000 revenue in, we're only dividing $3,000 or $4,000 at the end. The problem with trying to do this is that we have costs, and I've been talking about this ever since we started talking about building a pool. We have cost in this pool that we don't even disclose. I guarantee you there's costs we don't disclose, and the city has cost in this pool that they have marked up to other accounts. So all we can do on both sides is make our best good faith estimate of exactly where we're at. So I'd like to bring it up at the next meeting, and if Keith can give us some, Mr. Abrahams can give us some numbers on ACAC, and ACAC can give us their numbers, that'll help us make our final decision.
How about you? Good?
Agreed.
You? I'm good.
Well, one thing you might consider, and I hate to bring this up with all due respect, if it doesn't pass, then where are we? That's what I don't know. I have to always prepare the council for consequences. That's where the attorneys will have to get involved, but I believe we sit on your property. If you demand something and the council doesn't follow through and the agreement goes away, I'm not sure we have it's our building, Bill, you have to help me. I'm not sure we have rights to egress on that. So you may have to tell us from some date when you want us to clear out of that building.
No, I think we're gonna work this out.
How fast can you move it down to your parking lot next to City Hall?
No.
We won't have,
I don't think it's going to come to
I
that.
hope it doesn't come to that over this. I think we've got a lot of issues in the future to work together. It'll be more difficult than this one. And like Bill, I don't think this is going to be a game changer for either one of us financially.
So we'll bring this back on July 17th for formal approval.
I appreciate you letting me speak.
Yep, thank you for coming.
Thanks for your work.
Any members of the public want to speak on this topic? No? All right. Take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Espezet, second by Rasmussen. Discussion? Proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 6-0. We're adjourned.